of those things would suggest that this would be prime for her to recuse herself from this decision. Would you agree with that?
Well, that's a kind of quaint insight you have there. You
Yeah,
know, this administration doesn't even dabble in the ethical considerations about anything. They don't even stop at constitutional violations, much less something that's merely statutory or
right.
ethical in nature. And I do fault the Democrats as much as the Republicans for this because we saw this happening in the first administration. And really, that should have been the first impeachment we brought. We should have brought an impeachment against Donald Trump for blatantly violating the emoluments clause. Now, of course, it was difficult to find out everything that was going on because so much of this is done in a clandestine way. But the Democrats on the Oversight Committee, when I was ranking member in the last Congress, we released a report showing $8 million that went directly from foreign governments to Donald Trump. And that was just over a 2-year period and to just five of his more than 500 companies. So we only scratched the surface of it, but still we found $8 million going to the Trump International Hotel in D.C., which I called the Washington Emolument, and the one in Las Vegas, the hotel there, and the Trump Tower in New York. But you got millions of dollars from the Chinese government, from the Saudi government. And of course, that set the standard. And then there was this immediate payback that took place after the Trump administration, the first presidency, where Jared Kushner brought back a cool $2 billion from Saudi Arabia, even after the Saudi Sovereign National Fund recommended against putting him in this role, investing for Saudi Arabia. But the homicidal crown prince owed Donald Trump for covering up for his assassination, the drawing and quartering, the dismembering of Jamal Khashoggi. And Trump said, we saved his posterior, and they got paid back. But in any event, it was going on during the administration and then immediately after the administration, too.
Well, I know that there's a reflex to blame the Democrats, but I do want to ask what the Democrats can be doing right now, what the Democrats should do in light of this. And I brought that caveat up at first because really the onus should not be on the Democrats to be the only adults in the room. Like the Republicans are grown-ass adults who ostensibly also take oaths of office to defend, uphold the Constitution. And so it can't just be that we have to say, okay, well, what are you going to do to the Democrats and just kind of completely absolve the Republicans because their corruption is just so baked into the cake. But in reality, their corruption is so baked into the cake, and there is only one party that's looking to uphold the law and defend the Constitution. And so in light of that unfortunate reality, what is the recourse here? What can Democrats do? What will Democrats do?
Well, I appreciate that. And I'm somebody who doesn't blame the Democrats because the Democratic Party is pretty much all we got. We are the party of democracy and freedom and the rule of law and Constitution. But I think that all of us need to take stock of the fact that we cannot ignore corruption as a driving force of this authoritarian movement in the country. And I think that it was soft pedaled in the first administration. Now, the courts didn't help us because different people tried to bring lawsuits about the emoluments clause, and they kept getting thrown out on standing and other threshold doctrinal blockages, all of which is to say it was a political question up to Congress to raise it. So we cannot leave this alone, both for constitutional reasons, as I have felt for a long time, but also for political reasons, because people understand this is a scam and a ripoff. Donald Trump and his family have made more than $1 billion a month since this nightmare started in 2025 through the new crypto grift,
Right.
which is all the rage within the Trump administration. And, this makes the Trump Hotel look like a Cub Scout meeting, because if tens of millions were flowing in through the Trump Hotel and the golf courses, now it's hundreds of millions or billions of dollars that is coming in an almost completely covert, secretive way, a lot of it from abroad through the meme coins and the other crypto mechanisms they've set up.
I understand that what he's doing right now is a violation of the Constitution, but it's also true that the Constitution in and of itself isn't self-executing, and there is no enforcement mechanism in the Constitution. And so how do you push back against what he's doing? If he's violating the Emoluments Clause, then what is the vehicle to actually seek some recourse here? Doesn't somebody have to be harmed? And I mean, could you make the argument that it's all of the American people that are being harmed? Does that mean that anybody would be able to bring suit against this president?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the courts have rejected that approach. The courts have really repudiated the idea that there's a private right of action that any citizen can bring against violations of the Emoluments Clause. They're really treating it like a political question, which means it's up to Congress to act. And if you've got a compliant majority within Congress, then we've got a serious problem. So we've got to raise hell over this. And then the moment we get the majorities back, we must legislate to install a legislative machinery behind the constitutional principle, because it's not self-executing, right, as you say. For a long time, it was. The presidents, Republicans and Democrats both, really respected the idea that there's a difference between being president of the United States and being in business for yourself and making money. And they accepted what the founders anticipated, which was a wall of separation between the official conduct of the president and then private money making. They thought the president would just set that aside for 4 years or 8 years or what have you, which is why we have not just a foreign emoluments clause, but a domestic emoluments clause. It says the president is limited to his salary in office and cannot be collecting any other money from government agencies and departments or states. And that's another clause that Donald Trump has been systematically trampling and violating by collecting millions of dollars from other parts of the government, including the Secret Service and the State Department and Commerce and other agencies and departments that went and stayed at his hotels and golf courses and so on.
Well, I think part of the raising hell right now that we're engaged in is explaining to people in this country more broadly why this matters. Why does it impact them? We can see that it's wrong, but a lot of people just don't care about process. They're not worried about defending institutions that they don't think are working on their behalf anyway. And so why is this particular issue so important, and how can it more broadly impact the American people?
Well, there was an interesting book that I read during the first Trump administration called The Dictator's Handbook by Ulster Smith and Bruce Bueno de Mesquita, which tells the story of why corruption really lies at the heart of authoritarianism. Because authoritarianism is always about the rule of a small minority in society, of the wealthiest, most powerful people against everybody else. And so how do you motivate the people on the inside to stay engaged and to stay loyal to the leader? It's through corrupt grifts. And you can look at, the way that Vladimir Putin has his oligarchs, all of whom are billionaires, and he gives them a franchise. Right. He gets a kickback, but then those people prop up the system. But what that means is everybody else is getting ripped off. And so just like in America today, Trump and his family and his friends are getting just obscenely wealthy by what they're doing. They're also trying to destroy Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, any program that actually gets resources to the people. They want to transfer that through tax breaks, again, to the wealthiest people in the country. That's the only program they've got, an upward redistribution of wealth.
Well, I'm going to switch topics a little bit, but it's on the same general theme of a descent into authoritarianism. And that is this idea that was floated by Stephen Miller, that the administration is going to look into suspending habeas corpus, which is basically what prevents anybody in this country from being disappeared by our federal government, being held without any due process. We've seen that play itself out to a degree with these legal residents, with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was sent off to El Salvador. But habeas corpus would prevent the rest of us from really suffering that same fate. I'm going to throw to a clip right now of Senator John Barrasso.
I want to talk about something that one of President Trump's top aides, Stephen Miller, said this week. He said the administration is actively looking at suspending habeas corpus. Just for our audience, that's the right to challenge a person's detention by the government. This would be a part of the broader efforts to speed up their deportation policies. The Constitution says that habeas corpus may not be suspended, quote, unless when in cases of rebellion or invasion. Would you vote to suspend habeas corpus since the power does ultimately lie with Congress?